I was standing in my kitchen, wiping dried oatmeal off the table when the phone rang. I almost ignored it. My baby had cried all night, my head was pounding, my 4-year-old had refused breakfast again. At that moment, my biggest problem felt small and endless at the same time. Then the voice on the line said something that made my hands freeze. "Lauren Mitchell, I need you to listen carefully. That woman with your husband right now is not you." I leaned against the counter, suddenly unsure if my legs could hold me. "I'm sorry, who is this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady while my heart began to race. "This is Nina Brooks. I work at Harbor National Bank, downtown branch. You helped me years ago. You probably don't remember." But I did remember. 5 years earlier I had saved her job by proving her supervisor was stealing. Since then, we exchanged polite smiles whenever I came into the bank, nothing more. This call was not polite. "Your husband is here," Nina said. "He's in a private conference room. And the woman sitting next to him looks like you. She's wearing your coat, carrying your bag. She showed your ID." Laughed, a dry, broken sound that didn't feel like mine. "That's impossible. My husband is on a business trip. He left yesterday." There was a pause, long enough to make my stomach tighten. "Lauren," she said quietly, "I know you. I see you often. This is not you." "They're trying to move everything," she continued. "Your accounts, your properties, and your mother is with them, signing as a witness." The room tilted. In that moment, I understood something I didn't yet have words for. While I was busy surviving my life, someone was actively stealing it, and I had no idea how close I was to losing everything. Before I became the woman scrubbing oatmeal off a kitchen table at noon, I was someone else entirely. My name is Lauren Mitchell, and I used to be a senior financial analyst. The kind who stayed late because I loved the work. The kind who could look at a balance sheet and see what others missed. At the firm, they used to joke that I had X-ray vision. I could spot manipulation buried under clean numbers and confident signatures. I wore tailored suits. I walked into boardrooms without hesitation. When I spoke, people listened. I earned my own money, good money. I paid my own rent. I chose my own life. Then I fell in love. Ethan admired my intelligence, at least that is what he said. He told me I was brilliant, driven, impressive. When I became pregnant with our first child, he said something that sounded loving at the time. "You don't need to push yourself so hard anymore. I've got us." After the second baby, it became, "Why stress yourself? Stay home for a while." After the third, it turned into, "The kids need you more than the world needs another analyst." And slowly, without a single dramatic moment, I disappeared. Not all at once, piece by piece. My confidence softened, my work emails stopped coming, my suits stayed in the closet, my world shrank to nap schedules, grocery lists, and surviving the day without crying. I told myself this was temporary, that I could always go back. But time has a way of turning pauses into habits. And habits into cages. I did not lose my intelligence. I simply stopped being allowed to use it. Ethan Mitchell did not become controlling overnight. That is the part people rarely understand. If he had started by telling me what I could not do, I would have noticed, I would have resisted. But he started by offering help, protection, comfort. "I'll handle the finances," he said. "You have enough on your plate." And it sounded reasonable, loving even. At first it was small things. He asked me to sign papers because he was busy. He summarized them quickly, confidently. I trusted him. Why wouldn't I? He was my husband, the father of my children. When I asked questions, he smiled and kissed my forehead. "You worry too much." When I mentioned going back to work, he frowned. "Do you really want strangers raising our kids?" When friends invited me out, he sighed. "You look exhausted. Maybe next time." Over time, the invitations stopped. The decisions stopped being mine. I stopped knowing where our money actually went. I stopped opening bank statements. I stopped feeling like I had a right to ask. He liked to remind me how much pressure he was under, how hard he worked, how everything he did was for the family. And I believed him. Because believing him was easier than admitting something was wrong. By the time I realized I had no access to our finances, no recent work history, and no independent income, I was already too tired to fight. Exhaustion is a powerful tool. It makes you compliant, it makes you grateful for scraps of reassurance, it makes you doubt yourself. I did not notice the cage being built around me, because it was padded with comfort, routine, and trust. And by the time I felt the bars, I was already inside. Looking back, the warning signs were there. They were quiet, ordinary, easy to explain away if you wanted peace more than truth. My beige wool coat disappeared one afternoon. The one I wore to meetings, the one Ethan always said made me look professional. When I asked about it, he shrugged and said we probably left it at the dry cleaners. I believed him. 2 weeks later, my handbag went missing. Inside were my ID, a few credit cards, things I rarely used anymore. Ethan said he found it later in the car, slightly damaged. When I noticed my driver's license looked different, he laughed and told me I was imagining things. I told myself I was overtired. My mother started calling more often, asking strange questions. Was I sleeping enough? Did I feel overwhelmed? Had I ever thought about taking a long break from everything? I thought she was worried about me. And I know she was gathering information. Ethan began making comments that stayed with me longer than they should have. Have you looked at yourself lately? I'm embarrassed to take you out like this. You used to care. Each sentence landed softly, like concern, but together they built something heavy inside me. I started avoiding mirrors, avoiding conversations, avoiding myself. When something feels wrong but you are too tired to confront it, your mind looks for the simplest explanation. You blame yourself. I told myself I was failing as a wife, as a woman, as a partner. It never crossed my mind that someone was preparing to replace me. Not in my marriage. Not in my own life. Ignoring the red flags felt safer than pulling on a thread that might unravel everything. So I stayed quiet. And that silence almost cost me everything. I left my children with a neighbor and went straight to the bank. I did not change my clothes, I did not fix my hair. I walked out the door in old jeans and a stretched t-shirt, my mind racing faster than my body could keep up. On the ride downtown, fragments of my old life began to surface. The analyst, the woman who asked questions, the one who never accepted vague answers. I called Nina as soon as I arrived. I'm here, I said. I can't go through the main entrance, they'll see me. There's a service entrance in the back, she replied. I'll meet you. 5 minutes later, I was following her through a narrow staffed staircase that smelled like old coffee and cleaning supplies. My heart was pounding so loudly I was sure she could hear it. They're in conference room C, she whispered. They've been there for almost 2 hours. She led me into a small security room filled with flickering monitors. On the screens I saw my husband. Ethan sat at the head of the table, relaxed, confident, wearing a suit I had never seen before. He looked successful, untouched by sleepless nights or worry. Next to him sat a woman wearing my coat, holding my bag. Her hair was styled the way mine used to be before I stopped caring. She looked like me. Or rather, like the version of me I used to be. Across from them was my mother, dressed neatly, focused, signing documents without hesitation. There was also Ethan's sister, Rachel, organized, efficient, stacking papers like someone very comfortable with paperwork that wasn't hers. I felt something crack inside me. Not sadness. It was clarity. This was not a mistake, this was not panic or confusion. This was a plan, and I had walked in just in time to see it. I did not cry, and that surprised me. I stood there watching the monitors, and something inside me shifted into a familiar place. A quiet one, a focused one. The place I used to live in when a deal stopped making sense and everyone else in the room missed it. I turned to Nina. I need transaction histories for every account in my name 3 years back, and every power of attorney ever filed under my signature. She hesitated for half a second, then she nodded and left the room. While she was gone, I watched Ethan lean toward the woman beside him. His hand rested on her back in a way I recognized instantly. Not the touch of a colleague, not the touch of a stranger, the touch of habit. When Nina returned, she carried a thick folder of printed statements. She handed me a pencil without asking. My hands moved automatically. $10,000 here, $8,000 there, small enough to avoid alarms, frequent enough to drain a life. Over $800,000 gone. All transferred to an LLC registered to Ethan's sister. 3 months earlier, a general power of attorney had been filed in my name. It authorized the sale of our primary residence. I had never seen it. 1 month ago, a loan had been taken out using our vacation property as collateral. I had never signed for it. 2 weeks ago, the beneficiary on my life insurance policy was changed. From my children to my husband. My throat tightened, but my mind stayed sharp. Nina, I said, pointing to one line, where was this power of attorney signed? She checked the system. Downtown branch. According to records, you were physically present. Oh, the security footage. The video showed a woman in my coat, filmed from behind, signing documents. She never turned toward the camera. That wasn't me, I said calmly. I was hospitalized that week, I can prove it. Nina's face drained of color. This is fraught, she whispered. Multiple counts. That's not all, I replied. I made one call, an old colleague, someone who still owed me a favor. 15 minutes later, he confirmed what my instincts already knew. Ethan's company was bankrupt, crushed by debt, lawsuits pending, creditors closing in. He had been hiding it for over a year. And suddenly everything made sense. I was not his partner. I was his shield. When things were good, he was the success story. When things collapsed, everything was transferred into my name. And now he was emptying it all, leaving me with the debt, and nothing else. I stepped out of the security room because I needed air. The truth has weight. When it settles in your chest all at once, it becomes hard to breathe. I found my mother in the women's restroom, standing in front of the mirror, touching up her lipstick. She looked calm, composed, like a woman helping her family with paperwork. When she saw my reflection, her hand froze. "Lauren," she whispered, "what are you doing here?" I looked at her for a long moment before answering. "What are you doing here, Mom?" She straightened her shoulders. "Ethan asked me to help. He said you weren't well, that you were overwhelmed. He said you agreed to all of this." "That woman in the conference room," I said quietly, "is not me. You know that." She looked away. "Really don't remember." She said, "Messages where you talked about leaving. About not coping anymore." "They're fake," I replied. "I never wrote them. He needed you to believe I was unstable." Her lips pressed into a thin line, a gesture I knew well, the one she used when she didn't want to admit she might be wrong. "Bombing, said he was protecting the grandchildren," she murmured, "that this was for the family." "Mom," I said, stepping closer, "he has been supporting his mistress for 3 years with my money. She's pregnant. Right now he's trying to leave me with debt and take everything else." She shook her head slowly. "That's not possible." So I took her hand and led her back to the security room. On the screen, Ethan leaned toward the other woman and touched her cheek, gently, intimately, without thinking. My mother's knees buckled. She sat down hard. "He never looked at you like that," she whispered. "I know," I said, "because I was never the one he loved. I was useful." Nina placed the documents in front of her, transfers, deeds, dates, proof. My mother covered her mouth and began to cry. Not dramatic tears, real ones. "I believed him," she said. "I chose him over you." I sat beside her. "You can still fix this," I said. "But you have to tell the truth." She wiped her face and looked at me. For the first time in years, I saw shame in her eyes. "Tell me what to do," she said. 20 minutes later, I stood outside the conference room door. Inside, Ethan thought he was winning. Nina had called ahead and told them there was a minor verification issue, just enough to keep them seated, just enough time for everything to be ready. Behind me stood Nina, a bank security officer, and my mother. She looked pale but steady now, decided. I caught my reflection in the glass. Old jeans, wrinkled shirt, no makeup, messy hair. As I didn't look powerful, but I had the truth, and that was enough. I opened the door. The room went silent. Ethan was standing by the window, phone in hand. When he saw me, it slipped from his fingers and hit the carpet. The sound was sharp. Final. The woman in my coat jumped up so fast she knocked her chair backward. Without the calm posture, without the illusion, she looked young, frightened, out of place. Rachel clutched the folder of documents to her chest like a shield. The bank manager looked from me to the woman beside Ethan and back again, confusion spreading across his face. "Illing," I said calmly, "how was your business trip?" He opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. "Lauren, this isn't what it looks like." I stepped forward and picked up a document from the table. "General power of attorney," I read aloud. "Authorization to sell my home, to liquidate my accounts." I looked at him. "Would you like to explain why another woman is signing this in my name?" "It's temporary," he said quickly. "For the business, you know how things are." "I do," I replied. "You're bankrupt." The word landed like a slap. The manager stood up slowly. "Sir," he said to Ethan, "is this woman your wife?" "Yes," Ethan said, pointing at the woman in my coat. "No," I corrected, "I am." I turned to her. "Take off my coat." She hesitated. Then slowly she unbuttoned it and let it fall to the floor. Without it, the illusion collapsed. She was not a wife, not a partner, just a young woman who had been dressed up to steal a life that was not hers. And everyone in the room could finally see it. The police arrived quietly. No sirens, no shouting, just 2 officers stepping into the room and asking Ethan to stand. For the first time since I met him, he looked small. As they read him his rights, he kept looking at me, searching my face for something. Mercy, doubt, regret. I gave him none. There was nothing left to give. Rachel was taken next. She protested loudly, talking about lawyers and misunderstandings, but no one listened. The documents spoke clearly enough. The woman who had worn my coat stayed seated. She would later testify that was her only way out. The next weeks blurred together. Statements, lawyers, court dates, files stacked on my kitchen table where children once colored. Ethan tried to negotiate from detention. He offered a quiet divorce, full custody, property. If I withdrew the charges, I refused. This was not revenge, this was accountability. The court moved faster than I expected. Fraud, forgery, financial abuse. The words felt heavy, but they were accurate. When the verdict was read, I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no joy, just a strange emptiness where love had once lived. Afterward, my mother stood beside me in the hallway. She looked older than I remembered. "I'm sorry," she said. "I chose wrong." I nodded. "You fixed it when it mattered." That was all I had. I went home to my children that night and tucked them into bed one by one. Everything was uncertain. But for the first time in years it was honest. Starting over did not feel brave. It felt exhausting. I sold the house we had lived in for years. Too many memories lived in those walls. Too many lies. I bought a smaller place in a quiet neighborhood close to my son's school and my daughter's daycare. Nothing fancy, just safe, just mine. The children struggled in different ways. My oldest asked careful questions. My youngest barely noticed. My daughter missed her father and woke up crying for weeks. We found help. We talked. We waited. Healing did not follow a schedule. 6 months later, I went back to work. My former boss called me himself. He said what I needed to hear, not as flattery but as fact. You were the best analyst we had. If you want back, the door is open. I set conditions: flexible hours, time for my children, fair pay. He agreed. On my first morning back, I stood in front of the mirror in a simple suit and didn't recognize the woman staring back at me. Not the exhausted mother. Not the ambitious young professional. Someone stronger. Someone who had been tested. That evening, my son looked at me and said, "Mom, you look like yourself again." I smiled. I was not rebuilding a career. I was rebuilding a life. Slowly. Honestly. On my own terms. People sometimes ask me how it feels to win. They expect anger, celebration, satisfaction. But that was never the point. Revenge is not screaming, it is not humiliation, it is not watching someone else fall. Real revenge is walking away with your mind clear, your children safe, and your life back in your own hands. I am 41 years old. I am a mother of 3. I work hard, I get tired, some days still feel overwhelming. But every decision I make now is mine. No one speaks for me, no one signs for me, no one plans my future in secret. I did not destroy my husband. He destroyed himself. All I did was refuse to disappear quietly. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt erased, controlled, or slowly pushed out of your own life, know this. You are not weak, you are not broken, you are tired. And when the moment comes, you will remember who you are. If you found value in this story, please like, share, and comment below. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is. This is the art of revenge. And sometimes, revenge looks like freedom.